What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Well. Looks like Pokemon gaining a third type isn't so ridiculous after all. I know terastallizing isn't exactly the same, but it's a step in that direction. However, the Galar region surprisingly took a step back in terms of making Pokemon dual-typed, leaving many of them to be monotyped like some of the earlier generations. But there are still plenty of Pokemon from Sword and Shield that could easily be capable of housing triple types. Starting with number 6, Flapple. So let's get this one out of the way. People might not agree, but to me, there's always been something a little more going on with our friend Applin here. We've had other fruit-based Pokemon in the past, but Applin is more complex, since the apple seems to only be an exterior shell and the creature is on the inside. Well, except for its weird pie evolution, but that's a whole different thing. I've always kind of thought that Applin should be part bug-type, like a worm inside of an apple, but apparently it's more reptilian, so we'll just move on to its evolution. Now currently, Flapple is Grass and Dragon, which is weak to Fairy, Flying, Dragon, Bug, Poison, and Quad weak to Ice, so that's a third of the game right there, and it only resists Ground, but then Quad resists Water, Electric, and Grass. So when you look at this thing, I think it's fair to call it a Flying type, right? I mean, it's constantly flapping those apple pieces, and apparently that's enough to keep it airborne. So if they're not even gonna give it the Levitate ability, we should lift it up ourselves. Flying is weak to Ice, Electric, and Rock, and it resists Grass, Fighting, Bug, and is immune to Ground. So when putting it all together, that would make Flapple weak to Fairy, Flying, Dragon, Rock, Poison, and 8 times weak to Ice, but it would have a regular resist to Electric, Fighting, and a Quad resist to Water with an 8 times resist to Grass and a Ground immunity. So that's certainly an improvement on the defensive side a bit, and provides stab power to the flying moves that Flapple already gets, so I think that it would be worthwhile to see it soar above the rest of its family. Number 5. The Fossils. So Dr. Karalis kinda blows a hole in the theory that the fossils are rock-type just because those are the only ones that could survive the fossilization process from the past, because she gave us 4 different Pokemon without the rock-type, although they probably should have been. See, these fossils are abominations and crimes against nature, so clearly she messed things up in a big way. And yeah, I know the real-world inspirations, but we didn't bring those monstrosities to life. So if a less careless doctor were to properly resurrect these fossils, I think we can assume that they would in fact be part rock-type. So Rock is weak to Grass, Water, Fighting, Ground, and Steel, while it resists Fire, Normal, Flying, and Poison. So running through the fossils real quick, adding Rock to Dracozolt would make it weak to Dragon, Fairy, Ice, Fighting, Quad weak to Ground, but it would resist Normal and Poison, and then Quad resist Fire, Flying, and Electric. All the rest cancelled out to neutral. Arctozolt with Rock isn't quite as great, with weaknesses to Water, Rock, Grass, and Steel, with Quad weaknesses to Ground and Fighting. And it has resistances to Ice, Normal, Electric, Poison, and it Quad resists Flying. So I guess it could have been worse for an Ice type. The terrifying Dracovish with Rock would be weak to Dragon, Grass, Fairy, Ground, and Fighting, and it would resist Flying, Poison, Normal, Water, and actually 8 times resist Fire, so that's nice. And least of all, Arctovish with Rock would be weak to Electric, Ground, Steel, Rock, and Quad weak to Grass and Fighting. But it would resist Flying, Poison, Fire, Normal, and then Quad resist Ice. Really, it would probably be better to just switch out one of each type with Rock, since it doesn't really help all that much, even offensively, but I do think that it would be a nice way to tie in these atrocities to the rest of the fossil crowd until we can properly bring them back to how they were meant to be. Come on, Game Freak, it's an easy new 4 Pokemon right there. Number 4, Drednaw. I actually like Drednaw a lot. It's a superb name, and I feel like it's another great representation of a turtle Pokemon. And I don't actually think it needs anything to make it work, since it is fine as a Water and Rock type, which leaves it weak to Ground, Fighting, Electric, and Quad weak to Grass, while it resists Poison, Flying, Ice, Normal, and Quad resists Fire. But I think Drednaw could pull off having a little extra. See, Drednaw is far more fierce than most turtles out there, with its jagged exterior and, frankly, aggressive personality. So I'm thinking that the Dark type would work here. Dark is weak to Fighting, Bug, and Fairy, and it resists Ghost, Dark itself, and is immune to Psychic. But it's not just because of Dreadnought's cantankerous attitude, it also gets a pretty sweet signature move in Jaw Lock that fits perfectly in everything about this Pokemon, except for the fact that it's a Dark-type move. So let's get some stab on that thing. Together, these types barely interact, really, being weak to Ground, Bug, Fairy, and Electric, with quad weaknesses to Grass and Fighting, while it resists Flying, Ghost, Poison, Ice, Normal, Dark, quad resists Fire, and is immune to Psychic. So really, that's not too bad. I think even the new quad weakness is worth it just to get a defensive buff, especially when the rock moves cover the new bug threat. So Dreadnought could have been an even better help in a Galar journey than it already was. Number 3. Sirfetch'd. So back when Sirfetch'd was first announced, I was pretty excited because I thought it would be a radical shift in Pokemon evolution. Namely that a dual-typed Pokemon would be able to evolve into a mono-typed Pokemon that was neither of the previous two types. But of course that didn't happen because Galarian Farfetch'd was pure Fighting too. Which is fine, I guess, because Fighting isn't all that bad. It's weak to Psychic, Flying, and Fairy, and it resists Rock, Bug, and Dark. And I don't normally include monotyped Pokemon in these videos, but while Fighting does fit this warrior bird, it clearly has much more on the table. Firstly, I don't really see a reason the Flying type that it used to have was even removed. We need more Pokemon with this combination, first of all, and even if it can't technically fly anymore, its eternal National Dex neighbors have been that way from the very beginning. So Flying is in, but I think it would also be fitting to include Grass. In this iteration, these wild ducks have an even greater emphasis on their botanical blades, so I think it would fit perfectly. Grass and Flying are weak to Fire, Poison, Rock, Flying, and quad weak to Ice, and they resist Water, Fighting, quad resist Grass, and are immune to Ground. So if we add those to Sirfetch'd, we see weaknesses to Fire, Psychic, Fairy, Poison, and quad weaknesses to Flying and Ice. And it would resist Dark, Water, Bug, Fighting, quad resist Grass, and be immune to Ground. So that is a lot cranked up on both ends compared to the standard Sirfetch'd, but I think the greater offensive tricks could fit beautifully with this Fighting Fowl's massive attack stat. Number 2. Calyrex. The Crown Tundra did a great job introducing us to the new legendary Pokemon Calyrex, and created a bonding experience that let us appreciate it far more than any other offering in the last several generations. But its typing of Psychic and Grass isn't much to speak of, being weak to Fire, Ghost, Dark, Flying, Ice, Poison, and quad weak to Bug, and it resists both Grass and Psychic, Water, Ground, Fighting, and Electric. So as good as it was to become friends with Calyrex, it was quite surprising, at least to me, that we discovered the King of Bountiful Harvests had his choice of steed, letting you pick either Glastrier or Spectrier, two more legendary Pokemon that were Ice and Ghost type respectively. However, these horses could actually fuse with Calyrex, changing its type to Psychic and Ice when it's with Glastrier, or Psychic and Ghost when it's riding on Spectrier, so that's pretty neat. But it also doesn't really make sense for it to lose Grass. I mean, it's no less plant-like than it was before. Plus, its new ability, As One, allows it to keep both abilities from the previous Pokemon at the same time. So why shouldn't this power be extended to the typings as well? So the Ice Rider version of Calyrex would be weak to Fire, Flying, Rock, Poison, Ghost, Steel, Dark, and quad weak to Bug, and it would resist Water, Psychic, Grass, Electric, and Ground. But if we look at the Shadow Rider Calyrex, it would be weak to Flying, Bug, Fire, Ice, quad weak to Ghost and Dark, while it would resist Grass and Psychic, Water, Electric, and be immune to Normal and Fighting. So not only does the Shadow Rider get a much cooler name, but it comes out better on the type matchups than the Crystal and Clydesdale version too. Maybe they kicked out the Grass type just because it had too many weaknesses, but that sounds like a balancing issue and not a rational reason for stripping the Harvest King of its power over nature. Number 1. Phalanx. Again, I don't usually include monotyped Pokemon in the consideration for these, but if you asked 100 people what type Phalanx was, I don't think Fighting would even be the majority. I don't know what Phalanx is, really. Tiny ancient soldiers, I guess? So I suppose Fighting makes sense in that regard. But they are also clearly armored, so it should absolutely be at least part Steel type. They even have little shields, come on guys. But that's not all. Maybe you won't agree, but if you look at this thing, it sort of comes off like a metallic millipede. So could this entity be a bug type as well? It does learn very powerful Bug-type moves, so I kind of think that if it had been in any other region besides with Centiskorch being right there, it probably would have been a Bug-type. So, as we know, Bug and Steel is a phenomenal combination, only being quad-weak to fire, while resisting Psychic, Steel, Dragon, Fairy, Bug, Ice, Normal, quad-resisting Grass, and is immune to Poison. So if we put that with the original fighting type, it would give Phalanx a regular flying weakness with the quad Fire, and it would resist Steel, Dragon, Dark, Ice, Normal, Rock, quad-resist Bug, and Grass, and be immune to Poison. That's just great. And it makes Phalanx a little more sturdy so that it can actually tank some of the hits that it looks like it should be able to. I didn't really mean to have two pure fighting types on the list, but that seems like Galar's fault for not having their fighting type Pokemon live up to their full potential. I mean, just look at Grapploct, who's also pure fighting for no reason. But maybe you don't think the Bug connection is substantial enough. So then maybe you could make them part Psychic type, because they all act in unison, so clearly there's some sort of telepathy going on, like with Execute. In fact, maybe this is some sort of regional Execute? Anyway, the point is that Phalanx, as it is currently designed, is so much more than just one type. So much so that I would even be fine with it gaining a type in the next generation out of the blue, like some in the past, just to have a little more sense and fully integrate the multiple aspects of its nature. But those are the top 6 Pokemon from the Galar region I think might be worthy of being triple typed. Maybe these will be some of their favorite Terra types in their new crystal forms. What do you think of triple types in Galar? Let me know down in the comments. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded.